Who is he? Is he here today?
Good afternoon and welcome to Seasoned Citizens. Don Lange reporting. Today we're going to talk to a man who exemplifies what we should be doing as a seasoned citizen. We'd like to introduce, as time develops here, that we have Madeleo Blake with us, who definitely exemplifies what we're all going to be doing, what Madeleo has done in his life, in his seasoned citizenry, I'm sure, but nonetheless we should learn to get off of our assets and work toward something of a better future for our bodies. Anyhow, welcome, Madeleo.
Thank you.
We are happy to have you with us today. Now, to kind of briefly go back over some of the history of your life, you were born in the area here of I think you mentioned in the Letts area, which occurred a few numbers of years ago. Would you like to divulge your age so we can kind of keep track of that with us today?
Well, I'm 76 years old, and I was born in down around by the Cedar River.
Okay.
And I guess it was in Muscatine County where I was born.
Well, like you said, you weren't sure because the Letts area is obviously in both counties there. So, well, now, these are interesting facts that we like to keep track of. Now, as I have found talking to you, your history, you have worked in many different factions in your life, not just necessarily, well, of course you're retired now, which we try to do as we become senior citizens. But previously, you've worked in many different facts of life. I think you mentioned to me during the kind of like the warriors, I guess you'd call them, and that you were functioning then at J.I. Case in Rock Island, was it?
Yes, I worked at J.I. Case at Rock Island and at Bettendorf.
Well, both areas.
Yes.
There. And that was, I think you mentioned 41 to about 50 around the 9.
Well, yes, it was around in that neighborhood, yes.
Now, in those days, were you commuting? Were you going back and forth by automobile, or were you living in the area there?
I was living in Letts at the time, and I was driving back and forth.
Okay.
And with some other fellows that were working there too.
Like you like to do in those days.
Yes.
Well, as you continued through life, anywhere else, I think you were talking to Marlon Smith today. You worked at one time evidently at the Carver Pump.
Yes, I did.
One time in the lifestyle here, so.
I worked for Carver Pump down there for a little over a year. Then I went back to Case and finished out my time there. I had started there, and they had laid us off through the war there after the war, see.
Sure.
And then when that came up, why I came back to Letts to live, and then I worked up there at Carver's in 47, and then I got a chance to go back up to Case, and I went back and went to work there again for a while. I enjoyed working every place where I worked because I worked around a lot of nice people, and I enjoyed the people.
That's the secret, I think, to enjoy where you're working. That makes the work that much more comfortable and easy, obviously.
That's right.
So I think you've, again, been fortunate in having people surround you that was a, you know, something that you can enjoy. Now, getting into some of your history here, when did you start, I assume you've always been athletically inclined, but when did you start getting more into some of the features that you have got into recently in life?
Well, it's been about 18 or 19 years ago. I was working at the Grandview building at the time, and I was watching the kids run up and down the steps and wrestle down there at night. Just after when I was working, I'd come by and see them wrestling, running up and down the steps, and I thought, well, why couldn't I do that? So I would wait till my working hours was over, which was 5 o'clock. Why, I would run up and down the steps, and I'd run in the gym. I got to doing that, and I began to kind of enjoying that. I thought I was doing myself some good, which I was walking up and down the steps all day long anyway, but running was a different story. So I enjoyed that. I quit my smoking, and that was a great help to me. I thought that was wonderful. So I started in that, and then the next thing, why, my wife bought a couple old bicycles, junkers I might say, but she bought them and we started riding. And I kind of got the feel of the road. I thought, well, I guess I can bike a little ways, and I couldn't get a half mile in. I was all in. I thought, well, now something's got to be done. So I exercised that much more and finally got to buying better bikes. And by that time, I could ride a bike 10 or 15 miles without stopping. And I enjoyed my experience of biking and running also.
Well, that's quite a history, and I imagine jump in here and mention when you're talking about school children, this is when you had joined the L&M school district as a custodian, or is that the correct
right.
wording?
Yeah.
Or engineer, whatever.
Or a building engineer.
Yes.
Yeah, it sounds better.
Right.
No more money, but
they
it sounds
do make
better.
good names for us nowadays when we have common jobs, as it were, but nonetheless, some of you enjoyed being around the children and everything. But this is how it came about, and of course, through the kindness of Mrs. Blake kind of getting interested with you and getting these bikes, I imagine that had some effect on your lifestyle.
Well,
too.
she was a great help to me because on my bike riding, why, she always goes along and plays the sag wagon, which it helps out once in a while.
I bet it does, you bet.
She does a good job of it, and kind of looks after me once in a while, I think.
We all have to have someone like that in our life, I think. We hate to sometimes admit it, but I think it's very handy for us to have our helpmates right alongside with us. Now, briefly, let's going back into our Ragbri history, which you've been, I think you told me, in 16 years.
16 years,
with
yes.
Ragbri. Now, Ragbri itself has been running how long?
18
years. 18, so you only missed two technically.
I missed the first 2 years.
There
was 700, I think, 300 on the first ride. Then the next jump was 700. Well, then the third jump is when I was on. That was from Haywarden to Fort Madison. I think there's a little over 3,000 that was on there. And I began to learn something that day. I really didn't know what the story was on riding a bicycle. I went back to the car after I went over and signed up to go, and went back over to the car, and I told my wife, I said, cut my pant legs off right there, will you? I said, I believe I'm going to ride better. Well, I did, but I was never so sunburnt in my life. I blistered, and there's nothing else to do when I just cry and ride. So I had butter and everything else smeared over, and the nurse said, there's nothing you can do but said, just ride it out. Well, that's what I did. But there was a couple of hills I had to walk up. My legs hurt so bad that I walked up the hills and got right back on the road. And from that time on, I began to learn something about riding a bicycle.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, some of the history, which you certainly offered right there, and the advent of some of the original shorts, possibly, in our day and age. Can you relate some of the other experiences? I know you've had so many over the years in the Ragbri that I'm sure there's so many you can relate to, but pick a couple out, Madeleo, and kind of talk to us about them.
Riding on a bicycle with a crew like that of 5, 6, and 7, 8, and 10,000 people, it's a lot of enjoyment, and you meet a lot of people that's very nice people, and it's, after all, it's a little dangerous too, because you've got to be on your toes at all times. I've had several wrecks. I've been skinned up and bruised, and I've been with fellows that got skinned up and bruised, and I'd laugh at them and they'd laugh too, because they thought, well, I've gone this far, what the devil, let's go right on. So they'd go through with it. I've been in the hospital and had my arms sewed up, and I just kept right on riding. I wouldn't give it up because I really enjoyed going across Iowa on the bicycle.
That is fascinating to read about. Obviously, I've never been able to get myself that forward in athletic development. I ride a bike, but nothing to that degree. But I have been quite fascinated following the expedition of the rides across, and I've read so often that there are so many people that not just islands come to this. We have those from foreign countries come in and enjoy. We have obviously from the 50 states, I think, come in and enjoy the ride. This way you've met a lot of people from, that's what you say, you have camaraderie with so many people Again, touch on a few of the people that you might have met on this ride that stick out in your mind that you can recall.
Well, I met one fellow from Detroit. I remember him yet saying how wonderful it was. He didn't realize what Iowa was like until he got down here, and he said he even stopped at one place and the people invited him in to supper, and then they invited him to stay all night. And I said, I'm from Detroit. And he said, no way that you'd ever get in their house up there. And he said, I just couldn't imagine Iowa being people like that in Iowa. And I said, well, Iowa is a nice place to live. And I said, we have people from all over the United States, and other countries come here and ride a bicycle. Hawaii, I said, I met some from Hawaii. And some of the people came here couldn't speak very good of American people, but language, but they're good bikers, and they was very friendly on the ride because they was wanting to enjoy the ride, and that's what we made it that way.
I think that's great that this in itself is quite an advertisement for Iowa. Like I say, people don't really realize. I know we talk to people from different parts of the country, and half the people don't even know where Iowa is. They are associating it with potatoes, which obviously is Idaho, or they seem to get it confused with that other smaller state, Ohio, that so often people do get those two things. And we talk Midwest, and of course Midwest covers a great amount of area. I know some of the tasks you've had coming across Ragbri, I've heard, the hills, and you might explain, if you will, how do they choose this every year? Now, there are different routes taken. Obviously, we have to start western, as close to the Missouri as you can, because there's always a ritual there, which I'd like to have you touch on too, and end in the Mississippi. How do they choose these routes? I know Muscatine's been on it, what, about 3 times?
I think it has, yeah. Yes. They go to the western part of Iowa and pick out a town that, of course, every town wants you. Sure. Because there's a lot of money dropped. And that way, they pick out a town, then they go zigzagging across Iowa in order to get in the miles. And if they can get them towns, they'll get them. Because a lot of people, I suppose, they ride in for them. I don't know for sure. But I know that they do a lot of zigzagging across Iowa in order to get in 400, 500 miles, because it's only, what, about 280 miles really across Iowa. And if you go right straight across, but when you zigzag, you get in maybe 500 miles or more. And these hills and stuff like that, I think it's great, because every time you get a hill, you know you're going to get to ride down one. So, and it's good.
Has to come down.
Yeah, this is no race. A lot of people says, well, how did you come out in your race? I said, it wasn't no race. I said, it was just a week's vacation. And everybody likes that. We go there for a vacation, we meet people, and I know that some of them are in misery, but they enjoy that because they know the other guy's hurting too. That's the part of it. I think that when you turn around and see somebody fall, you have to laugh about it, say, well, that'll learn him one thing, to hang on to his bicycle a little better or something.
And I also imagine, I can just well imagine, many times you also stop and give a lending hand.
Oh, yes.
Because you all are so close to each other in this. Now, touching just briefly, as you stated, on the time and mileage, that has nothing to do with the Ragbri in itself. In other words, you're not trying to go for, as you said, it's not a race.
No.
Time has no, I could ride and be a day behind you and it wouldn't mean anything particularly except the fact of having finished the Ragbri. And
now, they got sag wagons to pick you up if you don't make it.
I imagine I'd need that rather quickly. You also mentioned the different cities. Well, obviously, I assume what's happening there is your local Chamber of Commerces are working diligently trying to get the people there, because like you said, it can mean some money, because there's a great following. I mean, it isn't just the bikers. There are many people, well, as you said, Mrs. Blake kind of tags along to see if there are any needs, and I imagine carry some of the commodities that are needed for the lifestyle that you have on the road, the sleeping and what have you. Now, I think I've read, or you've told me, or somewhere along the line, like cleanliness. You are offered the facilities at Wise or churches along the route. Is this the way it works out so often for you, that they're kind and say, come on in and enjoy our facilities for the time?
Well, most generally when you get into these camping grounds, or wherever you're going to stay, the schools or camping ground, I'll say, that the fair or any of them has got the showers and everything for the people. Of course, you pay for the showers, which we all expect that.
Oh.
But it only costs maybe 50 cents or $1. You can go in and get a nice, good, warm shower, and they have nice places around there to enjoy yourself while after you get your shower, and good places to eat. That's the main thing.
Yes.
And I think that every town that is looking forward to this should be prepared for food. And because you take at least 10,000 people right now, you stop and think the RV vans that's coming in. 500 and 600 to 1,000 RV vans pulls in there. That's a lot of money. And some of them is worth $50,000, $60,000. You know, them people ain't just riding around on pennies. They're riding out on dollars. And they're out there to spend money. And we're all out there to spend money, because you can't go anywhere anymore without spending a lot of money for a good time. And I'm sure that they're all out there for a good time.
There's a fact you brought up I don't think people realize, at least it isn't something that's spoke of in the paper or the media at all that I've ever seen, is the actual expense. You're not doing this without any expense at all, even though you're riding a bike with the energy factor very little. In other words, you don't use much gas or any fuel to do this other than your own body fuel, which is obviously enough, but there are so many expenses, like you mentioned, the showering, the food. Now, I know, again, I've heard so often where the churches have suppers for you.
Yes.
Now, some of those are lesser expense, obviously, and delightful, I'm sure, because most church bazaars and fundamentals like that are always way above just the ordinary. So those are very enjoyable, I'm sure. But they still cost money.
Yes, yes. The churches are doing a very good job of it. I think that the people that in the churches are getting together and bringing the food in, and they do put out a good meal. And most generally a biker, that's the first thing he looks for, a church place, because they do have some good pies. It's all good everywhere. I'm not criticizing no food, because we have good food all the way through. We do have a lot of farmers the first few years we rode that gave us free sandwiches and stuff. I don't know why they did that, because we didn't expect that. Nobody's going out and beg. We weren't begging. We were out spending money, and they were very good about it. But the last few years, they kind of let up on that. I don't blame them one bit, because the people that rode on there was hungry, and they had to have something to eat. Well, you take people along the road sitting out there selling Kool-Aid and all that, it takes a lot of time and patience, and people stops and buys that, and the kids get a big kick out of it. And we have water bottles being filled all the way along, and they have people standing with hoses shooting you with water as you come by. Everything is just friendly things, see? And you can't imagine when you're riding and see the cars that's sitting along driveways and enjoying the bikers going by, starting in the morning, and you think, well, now, what's the funny, what's good about this? But, you know, they enjoy that, seeing that. One year it was so hot, I come up onto a farmer that had his ditch out there, and he had a big piece of that black paper in that ditch, all beveled up there, and had it clear full of water. And the bikers would get off and wade around through the water, clear up to their hips, wade around in that, and then get back on their bicycle. It was, you know, just something like that. That was something.
Plus the fact of being kind of cheered on, you know.
Yes.
In other words, they're not there just to give you a wave. They're actually cheering you on, although it isn't a race. And I imagine, I would assume that sort of the problem that you're talking about with the free sandwiches, since you garnered so many more people, they're thinking, whoa, that got a little expensive, so they're backing away from that. When you had 300, it wasn't bad. 3,000 gets into quite a bit of money.
That's right.
Another thing you brought up that I sure none of us were aware of how many people are involved in it. I mean, the RVs that come into town and all the people that are involved in it, not just the bikers, but the people backing the bikers. And I think some of them wear shirts that are even sponsored. In other words, some people are, I don't want to say paying a lot of money, but they're maybe offering something to wear a shirt that says whatever particular product they might wish to be sponsored and forwarded. And it's a fascinating thing, but you still haven't brought up what the idea of Missouri and Mississippi rivers are. Kind of touch on that. That's an interesting thing. I've always got a kind of a kick out. Like last year, we didn't start on the Missouri, but you and a few other gentlemen, I mean, I think you said they brought a tub or something like that up, so it would signify that it was the Missouri River. Well, you didn't take that, did you?
No, I went to the river myself. I wanted to make, well, it's just a kind of a fad. We go to the river, we dunk our wheels in there, and then we come back to the camping ground. Then we take off the next morning, and when we get to Mississippi, we go and dunk them in there. It's just, well, everybody likes to do damn things. Says you did it. We did it when we went from one ocean to the other. We dipped them wheels in one ocean, went the other and dipped them in there. Walked out in the water, clear up above our ankles. Later, bicycled down there and threw water over them. We thought that was just great, you know. Well, I'm telling you, I was happy over that too, because I was glad I was there.
Well, that's what I want to kind of pinpoint is really it's not only something that's kind of traditional. It makes you feel like you've accomplished something and you're done for the day. Let's kind of venture away from that now. We've got our bikes pretty well going and everything. Let's talk about running. Now, I know I misread something or misunderstood something. I was asking you how you liked running in the Bix. And you quickly explained you haven't had the opportunity to run in the Bix because it happens to be right at the same time RAGBRAI. So obviously you can't do two things at one time regardless of your being very capable of doing many things.
It could be done if I had some friends that did that. They was probably 35 miles out at the last camping ground. And they came in that night and was there at the Bix the next morning and went and ran in the Bix. Then their wife took them back to the camping grounds, and then they came through that afternoon, which that would be all right. But I wasn't training for the Bix, and that 7 miles is a nice run. And they have enough runners and walkers there without me, but I still enjoy my biking and I still enjoy my running.
Okay, let's get into that. Now we kind of got off on the biking, like I said, but I wanted to bring that up. Now I can say to the people, look at any race results other than the particular Bix, but any of the local 10Ks and 5Ks above 60, which you qualify for rather easily. You'll find Madeleo Blake almost constantly winning that particular race. When did you start running? Now, is that, you coincided that with the biking, you said? So
that all started about the same time.
Same time running upstairs.
Just as, like I told you to start with, that I started running up and down them steps and getting in shape and running around the gym. I figured out how many times I had to go around that little gymnasium to get a mile in. Then I'd go home and eat supper, and then I'd get on my bicycle and go for a ride. And the time I started my biking, why, my wife had went to Europe, and while she was over there, I'd come home at night. That was in the summertime. I got off at 4, and then I'd get on my bicycle, and I'd ride to Fredonia and back so many times in order to get in 30-some miles or more. And I kept that up every night. And so when she came back with her luggage and everything, I told her, just leave it right in there. We're going right to Haywarden. And she didn't know that I was going to take off for that. So she went along because she likes to travel and went along with me. And my running all the time, I was still running while I was trying to bike all the time. Trying to keep, it's work. It's work. Nobody does them things without working.
No, the training, obviously, I think you touched briefly on it, but kind of tell us just how much training do you continue doing other than, I mean, training in the fact of doing exercise every day or something is what's called training. When you're running then. So kind of give us a schedule of what you do in the training area.
Well, in the wintertime, of course, it makes it bad just trying to get out and run. Yeah. But I do exercise. I lift weights, light weights in a home, and I got a trampoline that I can jump up and down. Then I've got my inside bicycle. And if the weather breaks so I can get outside, I go out and run. And if the weather's just right, I'll put on my skis and cross-country ski. Now, I like that, too. I want to keep active, and I think by doing all that, I can keep active on them things.
Well, I am totally astounded by how much you have accomplished in your short lifetime, actually. I think that's tremendous, and I think we can all take, I don't think any of us are going to be quite that forward in it. I mean, like I say, it took you a little time, but once you got into a schedule, I think you find it rather easily now, and something that I learned the other day, it's going to be difficult for me to say to you, "Hi, Porky," because you don't really look like a porky. I mean, that would not be something that I could look at, but I hear that is a nickname that you picked up along the life again. Can you kind of touch on the porky idea here?
Well, that all took place several years ago, and I created that name when I was about 16 years old. I'd go to Muscatine on Saturday night, find our way up, hitchhike up, and when I got up there, why, I'd always try to hitchhike a ride home, which there was people going back and forth to Letts. And I stopped in at Booster's Cafe there one night, and a couple of my friends, older friends, they was in there. And I asked them if I could ride home with them. And they said, sure, I could ride home with them, which I was real happy to get a ride. But I didn't have any money. I was broke. I'd spent all my money in the slot machine back in them days.
Oh.
So anyway, I asked them to ride home, and they'd go to let me, and they ordered 2 pork sandwiches. Well, they told John Downey, John said, Blake's going to pay for them. And of course, my words, I won't express what I said. I said so-and-so, I wasn't going to pay for no pork sandwiches. And they got to laughing about the way I told them all. And so they called me Porky right off the bat. And I never thought nothing about it until I got home the next morning. I seen them on the street, and they said, hi, Porky. And there's just too many around to get by with that. So that name carried with me all my life.
That is strange how those things are picked up, aren't they?
Yeah, a person get a nickname and you don't know how you got it, but that's how it's come I got that name.
Okay, Madeleo, real quickly now, I want to hit on the fact, because our time is kind of shortening up here. We're going to be leaving. You and Mrs. Blake, I imagine, are going to be leaving shortly for an Olympic contest. Can you touch on that, where it'll be and what you're going to be doing?
Well,
I think we have enough time for that.
I'm going to Utah, St. George.
Okay.
And I've been out there several years, and out there we have a book here that for all people that wants to get in that. Anybody is welcome to come out there and get in that. They have swimming, horseshoe, all kinds of sports out there. Track, I've been out there several years, and I met a lot of nice people out there, and I've enjoyed it. And when you go to these places, most generally, those people that comes there, they come there to win, same as I do. I go there to win. I just don't go to run. I go there to win, because that's the sport in it that you get so far along. And then I get to know these fellows and how fast they can run. I've got their schedule here. I know just how fast I've got to train myself to run. And I enjoyed it there. I got a letter from Sylvia the other day, and she told me I can only go so many medals this year. And I said, well, I don't want to go out there for one, Sylvia. I'm coming out there for more, or I'm not coming. Well, she said, maybe next year we can figure out so that you can be in more events and win more medals. I said, well, if I come out there for 2 weeks, I want to be in for bike racing and running also, and track and field. So I don't know how it's going to be. I know last year in track and field we was only allowed 5 medals, but I didn't care.
Well, Madeleo, I hate to break in on you, but we have run out our time, and we wish you the best of luck as you travel to Utah, and hope to see the results with you as top as usual. And again, we thank you for watching us today and bid you a good afternoon from Seasoned Citizens. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we got